United, a history of innovation. From Mujak and Goslings to GPS and sleep tracking, this club has always dared to push things forward, not just with technology, but in its ideas, framework and methods. Well, how does the Academy innovate today in the areas of sports science, mental health and player support? This is how. We learn about the groundbreaking technologies and fine-tweaked philosophies that keep a proud tradition going. This is the story of Manchester United's famous academy. It's Lifeblood. To explain how innovation is at the core of today's academy, Director Nick Cox.
We here have a particular strength in making sure that we protect our history and we protect kind of some brilliant basics and the bedrocks of youth development. But if you don't continue to scan the horizon to find ways to stay ahead of your competitors, you go stale and potentially you lose your competitive advantage. So it's across all areas and all disciplines of the academy, looking for ways to work from a science perspective. That might be adopting new pieces of kit or equipment. It might be the way that we use data to interpret the way we train or sort of consider the way that our boys are performing on a regular basis.
When we think of sports science, we might think of James Bond gadgets or fancy flowcharts. But in reality, there's much more to it, as Head of Performance Matt Walker explains.
I suppose the easiest way to look at it is we don't really call it sports science. It obviously sits within the traditional sports science realm, I suppose, for want of a better word. But we call it athletic development purely to reflect the athletic journey. So that it isn't really data and science heavy on the players. So things like GPS, things like that are just happening somewhere in their athletic journey rather than straight away being judged by numbers. We want to try and get rid of this sort of idea of CCTV and players being under watch. So we're very careful how we use analysis in the younger age groups, how we use physical profile in the younger age groups. So it's just something that happens in the background. We are data informed, I would say, rather than making huge judgments based on one particular test, because there's so much going on with young players all the time in their physical journey that we know that hanging everything all on one decision, on one test, on one particular day, maybe their motivation for the test on that particular day was off.
When we were here a couple of weeks ago, we saw the gum shields from the Premier League.
Yes.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so, that's at the forefront of everyone, player health, player welfare. So there was a Premier League project. We want to be part of all those things. We want to be a leading light on all those, to protect our players, but also, the integrity of the game. So we had players wearing bespoke fitted gum shields for a period of time in training, taking swabs after the games, after matches, just to see the effect on the body. And that feeds back into a greater data set. So we'll have the benefit of what's happening with our players, but also player health in general, which is absolutely crucial. We want to access the right things. We don't want the boys to feel like guinea pigs. So it has to go through a filtering point of view. We probably get approached, you can imagine, in the sports tech industry now. So the club have got, processes in place to filter out great ideas with ones that are just a novel thing that might not necessarily make the players better. Because really, of all the things we're trying to do, it's the famous saying now from Olympic rowing: will it make the boat go faster? Will it make the players get better? Yes, right, we should do more of those things. If we're not sure about it, we should prioritise that less. It's a nice to have, but the fundamentals of the programme have got to make the players get better.
I think one of the proudest innovative schemes that the Academy has had from a performance perspective is the work around growth and maturation that has been going since the early 2000s.
Yeah.
I think United and Southampton were the pioneers of biobanding and that approach. Can you talk us a little bit about that and how that forms a core part of what we do?
The easy way of looking at it is it's probably been happening by skilled coaches for a long time about playing up, playing down, not using physical maturational age as a performance advantage for too long, because otherwise a player might get into bad habits. So it's really a more scientific version of that.
Now used by football clubs across the country, United were the ones to spearhead a focus on growth, maturation, and the idea of grouping players based on their physical development rather than their chronological age. Why? because bigger players might not be developing their technical skills because of their size, while smaller kids could be unable to show their quality against their larger opponents. Grouping players physically optimises the challenge for all involved. United's athletic development coaches keep track of each individual's maturation, that is, a player's progress towards adulthood, and adjust their training accordingly. Over 2 weeks each season, every academy player is then grouped by their physical development rather than their age. Coaches then review the results with a better picture of each player and fresh ideas to adapt their programme.
We want to involve everyone in the conversation, players and parents, to everyone to be aware of what that player is going through at any given time. So the important thing is that everyone's aware of those growth changes, but it doesn't just sit on a database somewhere. There's some action points, but it might be as easy as a coach noticing something, a sort of a performance clumsiness, maybe something like that. Sam and Alex will lead on with coaches to constantly update them and have these risk factors, trying to limit the effects of that. And obviously the boys then might have an adapted training program that week or be on match minutes that are a bit lower than they would normally, just to help get through that growth.
Scott McTominay is one of many to benefit from an understanding approach to late developers.
Yeah,
That's a hell of it. I hadn't seen that photograph for a long time.
They were trying to work out why you've been with Marcus and stuff. Well, it's age groups. They said it'll be one abroad. That. I don't know where that'll be though. That.
Have you seen that before? I don't actually remember getting that photograph taken. Isn't it mad that?
But I think with me, with Scott, he was always a good footballer, and Scott always played up in the younger ages. Do you remember? So when we went to the cliff, so you've got to remember that is that even though Scott was a smaller player at the time, he did actually play up. So when we'd have the cliff on the Sunday mornings in the World Cup kits and things,
I remember.
He'd be playing a year and playing you'd be an 8 and be playing with 9s and things like that. Obviously before pre-academy
211's that, wasn't it? Probably.
Yeah, he probably played up the majority of his time anyway, and then it's when you get to that sort of 12s, 13s where most other people will have those growth spurts, you know. You were there, so I think what you got in mind there is that you were such a talented footballer anyway, and you'd always performed above already to the point where you got to the growing. So we'd always had a real sort of insight to him as a footballer, really. Him as a lad, really.
I used to have to proper fight, didn't I, really? Whenever you get to like 12, 13 and you're playing in the cage and stuff like that, wasn't easy, in terms of like you got lads who are fully grown men at maybe 13, 14 potentially. That's how quick it can be. And I was a proper kid, wasn't I? Yeah. But even whenever I was with you and Dino and stuff like that, when I was 10, 11 really, wasn't it? I always fancied myself to be one of the best players in the training sessions and the games, because that was my motivation at the time. And my dad obviously put very little pressure on me to play for Man United and stuff like that. He was just like, you enjoy it and you're having a good time, I'll take it 3-4 times a week, no problems. My time is your time in terms of wanting to see me enjoy myself and happy playing football.
I think that's one of the big things with our programme, is trying to challenge those early developers as well. So you were naturally developing those coping strategies, you were having to play quicker, you were having to think quicker, you were having to make quicker decisions. You're right, sometimes those early developers don't have to do that, they just rely on their physicality. So something we try and do is challenge them in different ways as well, by not just playing them up, but playing them with players who are physically similar to them as well. So everyone's getting a similar challenge.
There's no right or wrong way, like being an early developer or late developer, because you see Wayne Rooney, Michael Owen were playing in the Premier League when they were 16 and 17. But obviously for them, their bodies take a lot more in terms of later down the line, because they started so young, whereas I didn't start until I was 19, 20. So my career effectively could go longer, and you see the time scale here, you could play until you're 37, 38, subject to injury. So what are these things here?
So this is a growth chart basically showing growth spurts at different ages. So what we might have is early maturers, you can see, are having their growth spurts, this huge change in height around sort of 11, 12 years of age. We have these early sort of average maturers who have their growth spurt around 14. And then this last peak here is the later maturers having their growth spurt around 15 to 16 years of age.
Growth rates.
So that's the amount of growth per year. So we might see through the growth spurt around 10 to 12 centimetres per year. And the different ages as well that this might take place. So for example, you were probably having your growth spurt around here between 16, 17, 18 years of age. and it was probably as much as 10 to 12 centimetres a year.
Yeah.
So you can see the earlier ones who are already physically, and you can see them visibly bigger and stronger than the others around 11, 12, 13 years of age. And maybe more in your case, that growth spurt was taking place around 16, 17, 18.
Yeah.
And with
So
an
when
injury.
you look at that,
injury.
with an injury, so you got to think you're 15 years old there, and then you got to think Wayne Rooney, whenever he was 16, was an absolute tank.
And you don't even look like a 50. So it's imagine, it's a
But like a
generation.
10-year-old.
Well, now that, like you say, that looks like an 11, 12-year-old, doesn't it?
Yeah. Then you got Jack Harrison, who was somewhere in the middle, and then you've got Marcus, who was late like me. Devontae was somewhere around here. But it just shows you everyone's got different rates of how the body adapts to it. So it's
everyone's slightly different, and the biggest thing for us is just to have that awareness. One of our big things is communicating to the parents as well about where the player might be in their growth journey as well. So something we do is hand them out a little bit of information which just says, because not a lot of the parents will know too much about growth rates, when it might be occurring,
especially if it's their first child or whatever.
Well, and this is the thing now. So a lot of our parents can be your age, Scott, or maybe Marcus's age. So the young parents have not got as much experience knocking about.
So a big thing that we try and get the message across is this growth is completely normal. Everyone's going to go through a growth spurt. It just might happen at different times, but don't worry about it. It's completely normal. We understand, and now the big thing for us is to make sure that the parents understand. And some of the things that can potentially happen during their growth. So injury is obviously a big one, that you experienced, but for us to help try and support that player through that period. So
you had a few injuries as well. I remember you had a bad injury on the goal in a half term one time. Do you remember?
Yeah, it was my head, that wasn't it?
The head, that kept you out for a while.
Dimitri Mitchell went to kick it, and I've gone to head it, and I've still got the scar now. Everyone was calling me Harry Potter for however long it was. That was a horror show. That.
Did you ever feel that you were behind as such with others? So you felt that you were behind because of your physicality? My
groins, whenever I got to like 15, 16, could not even pass a ball sideways because I was in too much pain, and I would go home and say to my dad, like, what's happening here? Because this isn't right. And you'd get so much reassurance from the club, was like, just take it easy, like you're just going through a stage. But when you're that age, you don't realise what you're involved with. So that was a tough time. Probably the youth team 2-3 years where I didn't kick a ball, not one ball from like 15 to 17 and a half, nearly 18. Didn't kick a ball. Played one game against Bolton away in the youth team, and that was it. And that was when I was a proper kid. I probably looked like that was probably me there. Yeah. And you're coming up against guys who are men, and you can't compete. But that builds that mental resilience where it's like, well, I sort of have to find and figure out different ways of that. And then when you do get to that height and you start maybe holding people off a little bit more, you're like, God, this is so much easier than what I thought. Like,
late physical development can be a real challenge mentally for young players. Scott was no different, but benefited from coaches, staff and family members who helped him through it. Today, the support for players like Scott has grown further still, with Dan Ransom now leading the Academy's psychology team.
My role here is a lead academy psychologist. And I guess that encompasses a few different things, but most broadly that's to oversee the psychology provision across our academy from 9s through to 21s, to make sure we've got a psychology provision and a service which is there to ultimately try and support young players' development, but it also includes working with coaches, the rest of the support staff, to try and help them to try and create an environment that is going to support the development of young players in a similar way to perhaps the athletic development coaches might be trying to support players in the gym, or the technical coaches on the grass. We try and position psychology in that kind of developmental and positive space as well. And then we also have a part of the role which is involved in kind of making sure that we've got some safety nets or safeguards in place so that we can kind of support young players when they might encounter some kind of difficult moments or challenges as well. But I think probably a big part of the role, which is can often be overlooked really, is the role that myself and my colleague Fee have in working with the coach and the support staff, really, to make sure that we kind of create experiences that are going to kind of support the development of the boys and kind of proactively create experiences and environments that are going to help them get the best out of themselves.
Give them a prompt to do 3 things in there. 3 things, tiny little bit of detail in there, but not loads. They'll go into some real big detail, but then because they've got so much, the writing's that small, and then you're like, you know
Yeah.
what some people are like trying to read them. So, no, he's not heard me. No, I've just said how much of a top lad you are. It's on camera, that's why.
You really knocked him out. Your nose went longer then.
When we were talking to Scott, he spoke about the difficulty of growing at a different rate. What are the mental challenges of that time?
And we know that people will grow and develop at different rates and stages, and I think that can be, even for the boys who grow quickly, that can be a challenge. We know with some of the maybe impacts on their ability to move and do the things that they used to be able to do, the kind of that loss of coordination, so that can be frustrating for them. You've got some of the boys who might be a little bit behind on that growth curve, if you like, who are frustrated because they want to grow and they can't maybe compete with physically with some of the boys in the way that they were used to previously. But I think what that really highlights is just the variability and the ups and downs that are a normal part of that development journey or that phase of development. And I think one of the things we do try and recognise is that actually those ups and downs are normal, and they're not something that we want to try and avoid or kind of smooth out too much either, because those challenges and those ups and downs really present opportunities to learn more about yourself, learn more about the skills and qualities that you've got, and learn more about who are the people in your support network who you can tap into to support you in those moments as well.
I guess there's an assumption sometimes that innovation is all about technology. Sometimes it's about the way you behave. And I think as academies become more and more advanced and we work with players at a younger and younger age and we spend more and more time with them, we have to be really clear about the impact. So we do spend a lot of time thinking about the well-being of our young players and the way that we can design our program to ensure that our players can thrive in a pursuit of something that's actually quite difficult. I think we have to be really clear when we talk about well-being that the statistics in terms of mental health are on the rise across society. They're particularly on the rise in males and particularly on the rise with young males. So we're working with a demographic that, without even engaging with the academy, are potentially going to be a vulnerable group of people. So we've got to make sure that our staff are experts and they understand mental health and they understand how to recognise the signs of people who might be struggling, but more importantly, they understand how to design a really safe and nurturing environment for young people to thrive within.
Every age group will have players facing such problems, and today's under-18s are no different, as Scott McTominay found out.
Scott, this is a player around 15 years of age who's struggling at the moment in and out with injuries, very similar to yourself when you were at that back end of the academy. So this player over the last 12 months has grown over 7 centimetres a year, so anything over 7 is a bit of a risk criteria for us. We also track how much their legs are growing, so his legs have grown 4 centimetres in the last year. Anything over 3 is again a risk criteria for us, and this also shows that he's in his peak period of growth. So these 3 things add up to him being in a very high risk category for injury. So again, it's about us understanding, communicating with the coaches, communicating with parents and trying to manage them through that period so they're not completely injured, they're not out and they're missing out on the programme. It's okay, what can we do to help them manage themselves through this period? So it might be trying to reduce what they're doing outside of the club, or maybe when they are in the club focusing on lower intensity trainings, for example technical work, maybe being a floater, and sometimes just checking in with the physios as well, to say, good to go, no problems today, happy to train. So that's a really important part of our programme, is to have that awareness of where the players are at that period of time.
And it's good for the parents and the boy who's got trust and he knows, he sees the numbers there and he can understand the reasons why you are putting things like this in place for him, which will only benefit him without a doubt. Because what you don't want to do is put him into high intensity training and then he ends up getting injured and then his mental state is a little bit upset and then your parents are on your case and stuff like that. It's easier whenever you just manage them and keep a log of that, so then whenever they are able to have high intensity training, they're not going to break down and get injured. Which is what they did with me.
Yeah.
Because I would have broke down.
Yeah.
It was a fact. Like, it was 100%. A lot of parents are so, as every father and mother are, they're always super invested in how their child is getting on and stuff like that. But sometimes you have to leave things to the experts, the guys who know exactly what they're talking about. He's been doing it for however many years, I don't know, you want to... 21 years. And they've seen every single case across the board multiple times over, and they know what they're talking about, and they know exactly how to manage situations like that. So I feel like unless you're not happy with your boy's attitude, then that's a different thing. If he's not applying himself correctly and stuff like that, then that's the time to have a word. But say if it's not quite happening for him, say that boy's going through a growth spurt and he's not quite performing how he used to, because I had that. I used to perform so well when I was 11, 12. Come 14, 15, I can't get near anyone. You just brush me aside, and I'm like, what's happening here? Like, this isn't what I'm used to. But then it comes down to a parent with a stable mind frame who can, like, take it easy with the child and let him, like, grow naturally and develop. And there's going to be tough times along the road, but you can't. Well, it worked for me, and that was my dad's biggest thing, was if you got a smile on your face and you're enjoying it and you're applying yourself and you're practicing, it would just be little subtle things like that. When we get home sometimes on a weekend, if there's no game, come on, we're going to have a few shots in the garden. And I'd be like, nah, Xbox upstairs. And he'd be like, Xbox. Like that. And then I'd be like, he's right, you know, I've got to get out. Yeah. The scope to learn for young academy players, first team players, coaches who have been in the game for 20 to 50 years, you never ever stop learning. In my opinion anyway, because the game evolves so much that you can never sit and be like, oh, well,
cycles, keeps going in cycles, doesn't it?
This worked 2 years ago, so I'm going to continue doing that, but the game might have changed a significant amount. I think with the academy, they put everything in place for you, and they pretty much educate you exactly how a Man United player and person operates, the things that they do on and off the pitch, but it comes down to the individual, and it comes down to how much they want to be a football player, because if that drive's not there, you can forget about it. You might as well leave it in the past somewhere else, because until that point arrives, then you're struggling, and if they've not got that inner fight in them to do it and take the message on board, it's pretty difficult to go anywhere and improve, because there's so many kids across the world who want to play for Man United and want to be a football player. It takes more than what people think, along with a little bit of luck along the way. If kids are serious about being a football player, they'll take ownership of sleep, nutrition, and they'll find an interest in it because they want to be a football player. If they don't want to be a football player, they'll just be like, I'm not bothered.
For how good was Dev?
Dev was quality.
Dev's a player, right? You couldn't tell. This is the greatest compliment I could pay. You couldn't tell whether he was left-footed or right-footed at times. He was that
really
good.
Even at your age group.
Oh, 100%.
As a kid.
And you didn't know he would take corners or free kicks. Devontae was two-footed. That was a good group, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Dimitri, Sam Hart.
Oh, good.
Good group.
At the heart of every decision or programme at the Academy is one fundamental: caring for every player, past and present. As of this season, a new innovative programme launched seeks to formalise that relationship with Academy alumni. United Once, United Forever is about supporting players wherever they are in their careers. Players like Devontae.
The big idea behind it is that idea of kind of like our network and the social connections within that as well. So it's great that, you know, you've got lads that have, played together, some that were year below, others that kind of like I've never met but I'm introduced for the first time, different generations. Some 20, starting out on a new career or playing elsewhere. Others kind of like at the back end finishing, transitioning to a new career as well. So I think it's nice to have that kind of blend of, different demographics, different age groups, different journeys, different pathway stories, kind of like all mixing together and socialising with each other.
Our alumni programme is designed really with a specific group of people in mind. So we're looking at young players that have been in our programme over the age of 15, or with us for more than 5 years. We're doing our very best to find out in the last 10 years where everybody is, what they're up to, how they can help us, how we might be able to help them, and what we all might be able to learn from each other.
I think we've been crying for something like this for years, because there is a bit of a gap. It's like when the 99% that don't make it into professional football, it's like, where do they go? But now I think you can see, if you look in the room tonight, there's so many more people than there were the first time I came. And if you can keep that network together, and that's where we all are. We're all here together and we can support each other. I don't see why it can't be a success.
How did you find the period after leaving the club?
At first I struggled, to be fair. Struggled with, I think, going from such a massive club to kind of being in the wilderness, not knowing what's next. So it took me a while to readjust, and then after that I think I'd kind of done everything that I needed to do within football, and I kind of realised that it wasn't fulfilling me anymore, so that was my time to call it quits. I stopped playing and I've started working, and it's been great, honestly. Like I didn't realise I'd enjoy the normal life.
What kind of thing you're working in?
Pharmaceuticals, believe it or not. It's something I never imagined myself doing as a 5-year-old, but I think the grounding that the club gives us, it's so transferable into the real world. So yeah, it's been a good start, so I'm just looking forward to where it can take me.
Within the Academy alumni are a series of inspirational tales, few more so than that of Joe Thompson.
Well, on Joe. Joe's had a busy day, but I think, Joe, you want to maybe say a couple of words?
Sure. Thank you, Nick. Let's get the elephant out of the room straight away. Obviously not very well, but been here before, been here twice, and I'm just off for a hat-trick, really. And the fact that I am here should show you how passionate I am about this, and we're just getting started, and this is a perfect platform for us to really kick on, because we're Man United, so we're together and we want to do the best. We all know what the standards look like, we all know what expectations there are, and we've got to take it into the real world. There's loads of opportunities that I'm expecting to come off it, loads of experiences, and the tighter we are, the better we are. So I'm really, really grateful for you all turning out. I've got to say a big thank you to Andrew, who's always in the background making it happen. I'm excited and I'm ready to lead it, and it's going to give me a purpose. I ain't going anywhere anytime soon. I promise you that, so let's go. Yeah? Brilliant.
There's been 90 years of innovation at United's Academy, and there are certainly no plans to stop. But where might that desire to push forward focus on in the future?
I think it's about never settling, so never thinking that you've cracked it. You've always got to think that even when you're in a good place, we could be better. It's about being really open-minded, so regularly scanning to see what is out there, what's going off in terms of research and development of equipment that we might need to go and explore. So we have a research and innovation team for the club that are looking at all of the emerging innovations, thinking about whether they might support us to get better. And it's about this commitment to ongoing learning, lifelong learning. So that's not just for our players, it's for our coaches as well. And always with that open mind, knowing that we're on a journey of self-improvement and we're trying to develop ourselves as well.